In this screencast, we're going to take a look at using Forena with the Feeds module to populate a set of nodes based on data that's in an external database. Once again, we're going to use the customer Northwind database that we've been working with in the prior demos. And the first thing that we would want to do typically is to make sure that we have a content type defined to receive this customer data. We're going to take a look here. I've already defined one. It's a customer. It has some fields in it, a title, a body, a contact name, and a contact title. When you're making a feed, we go into structure feeds importers as per the feeds module instructions, and we're going to go ahead and add a new importer. For this importer, we're going to call this customers. We're going to say that this is customers imported from the Northwind. Go ahead and press create. And we're going to need to set some settings. So first, for our first settings, we're going the basic settings. It's customer. It's we talked about the description. We're not going to use. We're just going to use a standalone form for this demo, and we'll turn off periodic imports just for now. Although you could certainly use them for scheduling, and we'll leave all these as defaults. We'll press save. Now for the fetcher, we're going to use Forena's block fetcher to use a predefined data block to pull the customers from. So we'll go ahead and choose that and hit save. And for the block fetcher settings, that there's none now. We'll actually get to specifying the block in a later portion of this. Next thing we want to do is choose a parser. Now you can use other parsers because Forena just puts out XML. But what we will do in this case is we're going to use the Forena XML parser, and we'll see why in a little bit. I'll go ahead and hit save. And again, we'll leave the defaults for the XPath expression and formatting options. We'll maybe learn about those in a future screencast. For the processor, we want to use the node processor. We'll change the settings. We'll say, okay, let's use our customer data type. We're going to replace existing nodes so that it can re-import the same customers without any trouble. The text format, it's important. We'll want to change that to full HTML so that we can use all of our Forena reports. I'll show you a little bit more about that later. And we can choose an author as anonymous, and we can say, well, I'll use myself as the author, and I'm not going to expire nodes, and then we'll go ahead and hit save. So then the next thing we're going to want to do is set up some mapping. So in this case, we're basically going to be mapping fields from the customer's data block to the fields in the node. So to do that, we kind of need to know what is in the data block, and to accomplish that, I'm going to jump out temporarily to the Forena Reports Query tool so that I can quickly inspect what kind of columns I have to choose from that data block. So I'll go to my Data tab. I'll move over here and I'll search for my customers block because that's what I'm going to use for the importer. I'll go ahead and load that. We'll note that we have a bunch of, here's the select statement that's being used for the export. There's a customer ID, which is important, a company name, a contact name, and a contact title. So we're going to be using these fields. So what we'll want to do is specify that we're going to add, we'll add the company name field, and we'll use Forena's normal squiggly brace for field binding. We can actually concatenate multiple fields and things like that, but this will extract the company name field from that data block, and we're going to put that one in the title. and we'll hit save, and then we'll add another one. We'll add the contact name field, and we're going to move that into the contact name field. We will add the contact title, and we'll move that into the contact title field. And we will then we will also add a unique identifier so that we can keep track of that. We'll use the customer ID field in the data block as the guaranteed unique identifier. We'll save that, and we will change this to indicate that it is used as unique. And what that's going to do is it's going to use this ID to update nodes. So when we're re-importing the data over and over again, we'll be getting updates associated with those things. And then what we can also do is specify a report as the body of the node. So in this case, I'm going to use Forena, some new features in Forena about custom contexts. And what you just need to know is if you do frx report dot customer orders, then it will use what it will do is it'll go out and get the report customer orders using the data from this block as parameters to that report, and we're going to stick that in and it's going to render that report for each of the customers that we use, and it's going to stick that into the body field of the node. So let's go ahead, having defined our node import processor, and we've saved our saved everything. We're ready to go and do our import. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and close this and re-navigate back to the feeds importers, and it notes that you can go to the import page to actually do an import. So in this case, we are going to specify our data block of, again, Northwind customers as the data source for this particular data block. We'll leave the parameters sections blank, and we'll go ahead and import that data. It says it created 93 nodes, and so now you'll see that if we go to the structure or we actually go to the content menu, we'll see that a whole bunch of new nodes have been created. Well, as we drill down into those nodes, we'll see, sure enough, there's the contact name being pulled from the contact name, and the contact title is owner. So we've managed to create from our databases, from a SQL statement, very quickly, node mapping for Forena. Now you'll notice that the body field in each of these nodes is blank, or is an empty report. And the reason for that is because, as I said, in the importers, in the feed importers, when we're editing those, in the mapping of that, it was going to use, for this FRX report customer orders, it was going to use the row, the current row for the data block, as the input parameters for the report that is being run here. So unfortunately, when I built that data block, I built it in such a way that I used there is no customer in the customer field in the data, but there's a customer ID field. So what I need to do is make sure that I have in my data block something that matches the report's parameter that's being expected. And the reason is because in the customer orders SQL file, that data block that's used in that report expects expects the parameter to be customer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little cheat here and go back into my customers query and that's used in this report, and I'm going to go ahead and double up this customer ID with another one. But this time I'm going to call that customer so that it matches the parameter name that is used in the customer's FRX file of the report. Remember that this has this report expects a parameter. Well, not the customer's report. Excuse me. The customer orders report expects a parameter that is called customer. So I'm matching up the customers in the data block on my customers list. I'm matching up this customer ID column with the input parameter for the other report. So if I go ahead and do just that one little change, and I go back to my importers, and I re-import this data, you will note that it updated 93 nodes, so it's matching again based on that customer ID unique identifier. If I go to if I go to my content menu and I look at this updated node, you will now see that the body is the complete report as it was rendered at that point in time. So this is a pretty powerful tool. What it lets you do is then create these reports that become nodes in your Drupal database, which really opens the door for all kinds of interesting reporting, adding subscriptions modules to get notification when these things get updated, so that people can come and look at the reports. People can comment on the reports as they would normally, and those comments would persist even as the nodes are updated. So it's a pretty amazing addition to the Forena toolbox, and I hope you'll enjoy it.